Hi everyone, welcome back for another episode. This time I'm going to build a puppet using my instructions that I have on my website. I'll put a link below, but you can find it here. It's my puppet building. It's not a kit, actually. This is the pattern that I have available on my Etsy page. So I'll go through it with you and show you just how easy it is. It's a great project for March break, for summer. The kids are at home during this COVID experience, so you want to give them something entertaining to do. This is what you can. It's pretty easy. I mean, with a little assistance, your kids can get really into it. Okay, so I'm going to progress. So the kit goes through, or sorry, the pattern goes through, it tells you all kinds of things that you need. The fabrics you can use. In this case, I'm going to use fleece. I've already cut the pieces out, but this is the fleece I'm kind of using. I'm going to use this color. You also need to have some, it's like construction paper, but it's foam. You can get it at the dollar store. I happen to have a big sheet here, but you can get it in smaller pieces. You don't need a very big piece for this. I also use ping pong balls for the eyes. Very carefully, you have to cut them apart though, so you will need an adult for that and a sharp X-Acto knife. I also have some stuff. I think I'm going to use this for hair this time, but you can use yarn. This I just picked up at my local craft shop, actually on sale. And it's just like the fuzzy fabrics and stuff. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to use it yet, but you can use yarn, you can use felt, you can use all kinds of things. I've got that. I've cut out some, the pattern will tell you, sorry, let me just show you. The pattern in the package has the arms, eyes, tongue, eyelids, that kind of stuff. This is a mount of felt mouth, which you also cut out of the foam construction paper. The body, I've made these so they fit. They fit an small adult hand or a child's hand. If you need to make it larger, of course, you'll have to use your copier or a printer to enlarge it a little. The back, the front, and the head, along with a nose idea and the darts. Everything's kind of marked out here. You'll have to add a seam allowance. As you can see, I've marked dotted lines along here. So we cut your fabric extra big so that you can account for that. You'll see the instructions actually go through quite clearly with photos, what the hand sewing looks like, the overhand stitch, like a whip stitch, I guess you'd call it. Pinning it and putting it together, putting in a mouth, turning the puppet inside out, adding the eyes. And if you want to use a rod for manipulation, it tells you the instructions on how to do that. So the fun part is decorating, of course, and that's up to interpretation. There's all kinds here. This one is showing when I made my super chicken puppet. And also how to do hair out of yarn is also covered in here. Sewing nose things and eyelids and all those human parts. If you are going to use like the fur, like I just stole an Elmo puppet. I don't have any on hand at the moment. But if you are going to use a fur, you need to carefully trim away. It's very messy, so just let me tell you that. You need to carefully trim away the fibers from the top into the seam allowance. So if you're going to, if your seam is going along here, you need to cut away those fibers just so you don't end up with a lot of bulk in the seam, and it will turn out a lot better. The fibers won't get caught in the seam, so it won't be all clunked up together. I'll show you some of that too. So I'm just going to get started. I'm going to dig out some puppets and show you the kinds of things I've made, as well as the images on the front of the pattern. You'll see a little girl, just like a kooky puppet, and then the super chicken that is also in the image here. So if you're following along, you've already bought this or you're coming back after you've bought the pattern, cut out your pattern pieces and cut them out of the fleece or the fabric that you're going to use, and we'll begin. So here's a sample of some of the puppets I've made. I may still have them on hand. You can check my Etsy site for them. This is a little boy puppet I've made, so just using the fleece, a slightly different color fleece than I'm going to use in my sample today. But you can see how simple that is to make. I've also just made him a little t-shirt. Now, none of the clothes is in my patterns are on my website or in the pattern itself. So you'll have to you can buy little t-shirts at the store or flea market or something and just adapt them a little bit. This one I've sewn on a little bit of ribbing around the sleeves and stuff. It's very simple. So you can try something like that. The eyes again are ping pong balls. I've covered some of them with felt here. And the placement of the pupil is the thing that really makes your puppet pop. I've stuffed a little bit of a polyfill in the hands so they make them a little bit more full. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Cotton balls or whatever you have around the house should work. This is the little girl puppet that I made. I'm drawing a few freckles on her face. So I've used a little bit of yarn for eyelashes. The hair I've used just yarn, but I've showed you a sample of that in the pattern instructions, so you can see how that's done. I've also made a little nose and the mouth. Everything's simple from the instructions. The dress again is just a tube of a cotton I've sewn together. I put a little bit of elastic at the top and another piece of fabric just to dress it up a little bit. A little embellishment with buttons or little flowers. She also has her hand stuffed. I think I'm selling the boy and the girl as a pair actually on my website, so you can look for them. Fun little puppets. I'll show you how they fit. So you can see that my hand fits just in there and you can manipulate the mouth. Okay. Oh, he's all embarrassed. This is a grandpa puppet I made. Again, very similar construction, very little decoration. I've given him a tie and just a few wisps of hair, but he's so cute. I call him Pops. I've also made some bird puppets. These are just the ones I have on hand. I had some fuzzy monster type ones, but they're all gone at the moment. You can probably see them on my website, but this is a little bird. And instead of arms, I just drew the shape of a wing and used that instead. Again, this is just fleece. He also has a companion puppet, very similar, but with an orange beak. And I'm selling these as a pair as well. So now that we've done, we've cut out all our fabric. So here's the head, and I've marked a position where the eye is just because I was going to at one point sell this as a kit, but I decided not to. It was a little too expensive to ship the fabric and ping pong balls and all that stuff. You know what the cost of mail is like nowadays. So I've marked these just with a little piece of tape so that I know that these are the ears. I've also got some felt for a mouth. I've cut out the eyes, or so the eyelids. I've cut out a piece of fabric for the arm, so I still have to cut out the actual pattern for the arm, and then I'll put that on here and I'll pin it. And I actually will sew right around it, so I'll show you how that works. I've cut out the body back and the body front. Here I've just pinned them together just so I can see what's what. But very simple construction, sewing down the sides, but I'll go through all that with you. For the mouth as well, I haven't yet cut out the mouth palette, so I'll do that with you on camera. And I want to show you how to cut the ping pong ball. If I can find my knife. This one's probably not very sharp any longer, but basically you look for the seam of the ball and I can see it there, and it doesn't look like it's quite centered. So I'm just going to eyeball it. Oh, there it is there. And I'm going to gently poke that in. Oh, my knife is coming apart. Glasses would be good. Where did I put my glasses? Can't find them. But I'm going to start again. So very carefully, there on the seam of the ball, you would carefully cut this. I wonder if my snips will be any better. Not really. Basically, you just want to go around, straight around the eye, or the ping pong ball circumference. Please be careful. See if I can get my scissors in there any better. Don't do this with your good scissors like I am. There we go. So I've cut that up. You can trim away anything, but it does get buried a bit in the fabric, so you won't notice any kind of rough edges. And then we will use a glue gun, or glue gun is really the best for this because it's fast. So you will just basically glue around the inside edges, but I'll show that to you as well as we go. Okay, so I'm going to get my pieces, the rest of my pieces cut out, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I've cut out, I've pinned down my mouth, what I'm going to use for my mouth, and I couldn't find any red felt. I don't know where I put it, but I found a piece of flannel. Flannel is also great to use because it doesn't fray as much as some of the fabrics out there. So these would also be good for my mouthpieces. So whether you decide to do a red mouth, black mouth, I like to use a black mouth and then use the red tongue, but you can do whatever floats your boat. So I'm just going to cut this a little bigger than the pattern, so I have a little bit of a seam allowance. You'll see when you go to fit this into the puppet's mouth that you have a little bit of playroom. So I'll show you what that looks like when we get there. But first, let's cut out all our pieces. And I also need a piece of the foam. So it'll be slightly smaller, but I'm just going to use the same piece to fit that. And you can use a pencil on this stuff just to mark it, or a pen. And I'm just gonna mark around. It actually indents the foam, so I'm not so worried about it, the color showing. You'll see what I mean. So you can see my area. So I'm just gonna cut that out as well. The foam is good to use. You could use, because it's soft, but you could also use a piece of plastic or cardboard, whatever you have. Basically, it makes the mouth a little hard inside. It's on the inside of your puppet, and it makes it a little hard, so it makes a little flapping sound. And it gives your hand something to hold up against. Okay, so that's done. Let me move this out of the way. Something else I forgot to mention with supplies is if you want to stuff the fingers, or if you want to stuff the ears a little bit, the nose, is to get some polyfill, some stuffing. I'm not sure if you can get it at the dollar store, but I've seen it at Michael's and other arts and crafts stores. So keep that on hand for stuffing those things later. Okay, so the next bit, I guess, is, I forgot to cut these out, so I'll do that. So it's the throat piece, I guess, the thing that you use to at the back of your mouth. I don't know what that thing is called that hangs down, the uvula, maybe. So I'm just going to roughly cut that into the right shape I want, following this pattern. Smooth that out a little bit by folding it in half. Make them exactly the same. So that's that piece. And a little tongue. I guess I'm going to use some scrap over here maybe. There. I'm not wasting anything. That so I can fold this in half and make it equal parts. There. Get rid of my scraps. Okay, I'll put those aside because that's going to be part of the decorating bit. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can get this situated over by my machine so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm here at my machine, but I also wanted to note, so I've got the front and the back. I've marked where the center is. You don't probably need to do that. Sometimes there's a front and a back to your fabric. So just check what that is. You want to put the right sides together and you match the front seam, the front to the back. You see the back side is a little bit bigger. I'm just going to roughly pin that in place. And if you're using felt or fleece, they kind of stick to each other, but it's good to pin anyway. Just so you know, Now, I'm also going to sew arms onto this. You can sew the arms right in, which is maybe a good idea. So maybe I'll do the arms first. So on the arms, I've got two pieces right sides together, and I've got my pattern piece. So what I do with the arm, I'm going to pin that right through, pin that right on the fabric, and I'm going to sew all my little fingers down, or pin, I mean. Where's my pins? I'm going to take it to my machine. Oops, piece of scrap. Again, right sides together. And I'm just going to backstitch a little bit and sew right along that edge. You don't have to sew on the paper. Sew close to it. As you get to a curve, you can slightly pick up and turn. You can also do this by hand. If your child is a little bit dexterous, they can use the needle and thread, and so just like you're doing with this, or you can do a whip stitch right around the whole edge. As you get to the corners, just pick up the needle and turn. And take a stitch in the center by hand. And then go to the end of the finger. You don't have to be exact going around these curves. I mean, a hand's a hand. I mean, you could do 3 fingers, 2 fingers, as you said, as I did with the bird. You can make wings. You can have no hands. I've done a few monsters with no hands, just because. Mostly, I just played with the puppet without. Another stitch. I have this at a fairly wide stitch length. I think it's at between a 3 and a 4 on my machine. that, so I'll just pick that up. Do a stitch between the fingers so it gives a little bit of room. And continue that last finger. Oops, I went a little bit beyond, but as I said, that's okay. You want to do this with both hands or both arms. I went a little wider than my arm, than my pattern, as you can see, but that's okay with me. I just want to make sure both of my arms are the same thickness. So you can see my stitches are outside, but that's okay for me. It doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to take that off the pattern. And you can see that arm. Whoops, I made a boo-boo there, so that'll have to come out. Grab that stitch. I don't know where my seam ripper is. Mistakes happen. Don't be too hard on yourself. Or your kids, if this is their first time too. They're bound to make mistakes like we do. Okay, I'm not going to put the pattern back on, just sew that little bit. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Cut it out. Don't cut too close. Maybe a 1/4 inch away. My snips are a little not as sharp, I guess because I'm doing things like cutting paper with them, which I shouldn't be, or cutting plastic eyeballs, which is a no-no. I got a little close there, but don't worry about it. Just try not to cut the seam. Because if you do, you'll have a hole and you'll have to start over. I'm just going to give a little extra at the end there so I have a little flap. Now cutting between the fingers, go close. You have a lot less room. And when it comes to the corner, you want to go a little bit into the inside of the corner there, and again on the other side. That'll give you a little bit of room to turn. Pretty close. And you know, as I said, be forgiving to yourself. If when you turn those fingers and the finger seam opens, you can go in and do a little whip stitch to correct it and sew it together by hand. So to turn them, I have a little, I guess it's like a little forceps-y thing, but you can use a knitting needle. You can poke the fingers out with a pencil by going like this and just pushing against that. Now try to be a little bit gentle, because remember those seams are pretty close there. You don't want to burst them. And tuck it in on itself. Oops. And turn the fingers inside out. Right now I'm just stuffing them into the hand. I'm basically pulling that apart a little bit so I can push my tool inside. Now these are handy because they close and they lock, but a pencil will work. And then I'm going to reach in. And if you can't reach in, I mean, you could start turning right from here and just start turning it inside out with your fingers. As you get close to that hand, it'll you can pull it out like this. those fingers will pop out when you get close. It's a little, the fleece is stretchy, so that helps. But that is a lot of hand to get through that little hole or that little space. So just go gentle and carefully turn. I'm actually going to reach in with my tool here. See if I can grab a finger. Don't want to pull too hard, just gently. Maybe give it a shake. There's a finger. I'm going to reach in there with this. See if I can pull that out a little bit better. Now you can reach in with your pencil or knitting needle or whatever and just gently poke the finger and thumb out. The fingers and thumbs. Just like that. So I'm going to take a little stuffing. And you can poke it in, as I said, with a pencil. I'm just going to grab a little bit in my thingies and work it into each finger and thumb. They don't have to be really full. You just want to give them a little bit of fluff so they look more 3D and they have some substance. Oops. Got a little lumpy there. We don't want lumpy fingers. Another little bit of fluff. Don't take too much at a time because it will clump in there and you don't really want to have lumps. I got a little bit of a lump there, so I'm going to move it around with my fingers to see if I can smooth that out a little bit. Move things around. And little fingers will fit in there better than adult fingers. If your little kids want to stuff things up. And then a little bit more into the hands. You can go all the way up the arm if you like. I like that the puppet has a bit of an elbow and bends because they move around a little bit more flexible. But I'm going to fill a little bit more because if you use a rod, which is something you want to wave around, you hook it onto the arm so that you can animate them by moving them around and stuff. You basically would attach it here so your arms are more flexible. So I don't normally stuff the whole arm because it'll look like a sausage and you won't be able to bend it as much. So that's basically as far as I will stuff. So we're going to do the same thing to the other arm, and I'll be back. I'll show you again how I do it, just so we have another look at it. I did make an error not making sure I had all the pattern underneath, like 2 layers of fabric there. And the first one, I had a fold over problem. So I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to probably fast forward this, or you could fast forward through it, and as you will. Remember that you might want to keep if you made a thumb too big in the first one or too wide, you're going to want to go back and with this one and try to do the same thing. Otherwise your hands aren't going to match, which is fine too. Puppets are all unique, just like humans. If you need to, remove the pins as you go. Last arm I made a little wide, so I made this one wide too. Hopefully they're the same now. But as I said, it's a puppet. Everything is unique and individual. Again, a little flap. Very carefully cut that finger open. Let's see how close that is. Okay, turning again. I'll show you what it looks like without turning those fingers first. And you can see that you got a bunch of little holes in there. So you can get in with the pencil and push them out, or you can use something like this and grab it a little bit. Personally, I like poking the fingers through first. These are sometimes a little harder to grab to get them all the way out perfect. I'll reach in there and grab that other finger. Or you can go in from the inside and carefully poke it out. Again, don't push too hard because you don't want to pop that seam open. Okay, and then we stuff. Don't take too much at a time. You can always go back with some more. You don't want to end up with a big lump in there. I don't have them stuffed too hard. They're still pretty flexible. It's a little bit lumpy. I'm going to try to see if I can pull a little bit of that back. And then some more in the And there we go. Just going to push it down in place. Hello. They're pretty close. One's got a fatter pinky finger than the other. But they're puppets, they're individual, and they're never really seen together. But that's that. So if you've got a little bit more stuffing in one than the other, you can take those apart and fix it. Now, as I said, when we were going to sew the arms in, you could do it now. But what you have to do is you have to make sure when you're putting you have to stuff them inside like this, inside between them, so that when you turn it right side out, the arms are on the outside. Okay. But when you do this, make sure you have the thumbs both in the same direction, and not like this. So you have a pinky finger up at the top of the arm or not. You know what I mean? So don't put them in like this. Put them in like this. So I would put one on top of the other and stick those arms through. And then when you sew the seams in, you sew the arms and the seams. When you sew the seams together, you can have the arms sticking out a little bit, like that. And just pin them in, so that when you go through and sew, you can sew them right in place. The other thing you can do is sew them on afterwards. And what you would do then, because fleece doesn't fray, you would basically take it and sew this piece onto the outside of the puppet, like you would do an overhand stitch. Okay, so there's several other ways you can sew your puppet together. I can't remember what I described in the book. Let me just take a look at my instructions again. It's been a long time since I've made a puppet. I'm just going to pin that in place while I get my instructions out. So in the instructions, it shows I've done them separate, and I haven't actually attached the arms first. So I could do that the same way with you, and then I could show you how I attach the arms. Actually, on the chicken, I didn't do arms, so that's why they're not shown here. But this is what you would do. So you'd sew the arms in like this, and you'd sew down the sides. So let's start with that. Now, I have an industrial machine, so your home machine may not be able to take these layers. If that's the case, you could just sew through this by hand. And I'm just going to replace this a little bit. I'm not going right up to the neck because I want the puppet to have a little bit of a shoulder. So I just want to make sure I have all my seams out. And I'll just pin that in place again and take it to the machine. So I'm going to stitch about 1/4 inch away, whatever you feel comfortable with. Just remember that whatever you take here, you're going to shrink the size of that puppet opening. So don't make it too big. I think I got a little close there. Let me just check. Yep, a little bit too close. I'm going to turn it around. Because I've got the bulk of the arms in there, oops, my foot's sliding. Because I've got the bulk of the arms inside, it's making my fabric shift under my needle. So just be aware that you've got it all, okay? Go over it again if you have to. Forgive yourself. It's doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to trim away a little bit of that extra. And just double check that you've got all your everything captured. So you don't want a hole when you open it open. And then I'm going to do the other side. The same. Move my pin to this side so I can see where it is. And I'm just going to repin that in place. So matching my ends up. I'm going to go under the machine and remove my pins as I go. You can double stitch this because I know kids can be hard on things that on the arms. They can pull them and wave them around by the arms. And I'm just going to double check that I caught everything. If I'm feel secure, that little edge feels a little close to me, so I'm just going to go back and make sure I catch it better. Yeah, that's a little better. And I'm going to trim this. So now when I turn it inside out, my arms are on the right side of the body. And are my thumbs facing the right direction? Yes, I have 2 thumbs pointing up. Alrighty. So now we're going to do the head. So the head is a little bit different because it has a dart. So you have to sew that dart first. Okay, so I'm going to take the pins out just so I had matched the front and the back. But so again, take one of your things. This is the little dart here. So you're going to match those edges of the dart like that. And then you're going to take it to the machine and just sew that. You can also whip stitch these edges so you don't have to worry about that. But that's what the dart looks like now. I'm going to do the same to the other side. Remember, right sides together. And sew that dart closed. Little dots everywhere. Which I don't need. And there's the other dart. So now we want to match those darts, right sides together. Get rid of that dot. And we want to sew around. Now, see, this puppet has a mouth that we haven't sewn in place yet. And we'll do that after. This round part is where the neck attaches to the body. So you want to sew around from the top of the mouth, which is where this is. You can pin this. Again, a 1/4 inch. You can make your puppet pieces a little bit bigger if you want to, if you're more comfortable sewing a 1/2 inch seam. I'm just going back and forth over that dart so it's a little stronger. Now I'm stopping here because this is the neck opening and I want to keep that open. So now I have to go to this side. So I'm on the chin side now and I'm sewing that closed. And I caught everything there. And I caught everything on that side. So that's good. So this is what your head looks like when it's inside out or right side out. Okay, so we have the mouth opening and we have the neck opening. So the next part's a little bit tricky. So this is how we attach the head to the body. And it describes it in the pattern. You have to insert the head right sides together. So I'm going to turn the body back inside out. Now I'm going to find out where the front is and where the back is. So this is my front center and I marked that before. So I want to hold on to that and I want to put my head inside. This is my neck opening and I want put my head inside so I have the chin to that little mark, which is, so this is my chin and my mouth opening. I want to make sure that my chin, I'm going to put my thumb there. My chin is right on that, but on the inside. And I'm just going to put a pin there. Okay? And then I'm going to stuff the rest of the head in the body. So these are right sides together. Remember, your body is inside out already. So we're putting the head inside with the right side facing the inside of the body. And I've also marked a spot on the back in the center. This helps me figure out where to put this pin so that I know that my head is going to be the same all the way around. I'm just going to put my hand in there and just smooth things out a little bit. So, and that's what I have. So I'll show you that again, just in case you missed it. I'm going to take the pins out. So my body's inside out. This is the front side of the body, inside out. I've marked the center of that piece, and I've marked the center of the back. Okay, so basically what those marks mean is that's where I want to match my neck, my chin, and my back of the head seam, which is what these two pieces are. So the chin seam and the top of the back of the head seam. So I want to have the right side out so that all my seams are inside. And I'm going to match. First, I'm going to take the chin and I'm going to match the chin to that spot. And I'm going to pin it. I'm going to stuff the rest of the head in. And I'm going to take that seam and hold it. I'm going to match it with that mark. And I'm just going to try to stuff the rest of the head in so it's nice and neat. So I can see things a little bit clearer. Okay, so then I'm going to take that mark and I'm going to match it with this seam and I'm going to pin it there. Okay, so as you go around the puppet, make sure that those edges are all matched up, and you can put pins in just so you have that all matched up nice. And this is fabric is stretchy, as I said, so it's pretty forgiving. So just slide it in place until you get it matched up. Okay, so then I'm going to take it back to the machine. My foot wants to fall off there. Okay, back to the machine. So I'm going to take it now. I'm going to take, maybe I'll start right there. And I'm going to sew. Now you can do this by hand, do a whip stitch. I show in the directions how to do a whip stitch right there. So you can sew those together that way as well. I'm going to do this with a machine. Don't forget to take out your pins as you go. You don't want to break a needle. And your kids may be great at sewing, or this could be a project they do if they're a little older by themselves. Just be careful with the eye. You may be able to sew on big buttons for eyes, or felt. You can just glue felt on. You don't have to use the ping pong balls, although it does make it look more like a Muppet puppet with those. And I'm just going to go back and forth over the edge. So I've gone all the way around now. So I'm just checking that I caught everything. Okay, and that's that. So now we can turn it all inside out. And it's already looking like a puppet. We just need to put a mouth in there. And that we're going to do by hand. Just so I can show you what the whip stitch does look like. Okay, so now I've got my mouth and my palette. So at this point, it makes sense to actually do this gluing now. Now, there's a couple things you can use. You can use regular craft glue. You don't want to put it on too thick because it might soak through the felt. So I like to use just regular craft glue and let it soak over, dry overnight. So I'm going to do that and I'll come back. Okay. So before I go too far, I'm going to show you what I'm using. Move my puppet out of the way. So this is my felt. Oops. And so I've used this Elmer's washable clear transparent. It's a school glue. You really don't need anything too super strong. This is a washable, it's non-toxic. So I recommend it. It dries pretty quick. It dries clear. So I've put it on and I've smeared it with my finger, but you can use a popsicle stick or a paintbrush or whatever you like. And then I'm going to put it on. Don't want it too thick because you don't want it to go through. And then I'm going to put it on like that, press it, and let it dry. And wash my hands, of course. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. You can see none of the glue has come through that felt. So don't be too heavy with, use a heavy hand on that glue. I don't want to start sewing it now because it will pop up when I'm doing the handwork. So I'll come back when that's dry and we'll sew the rest of it together. Okay, so I've glued the back of my foam, construction type foam, to the felt mouthpiece. I've added the tongue and the uvula, I guess it is. So now I need to attach that to the mouthpiece. So I've threaded a needle here. I'm going to turn this inside out. And I need to fit the mouth to this. So I want to make sure I'm having the tongue on the bottom. So I'm going to turn the mouth to the tongue to the bottom, and then I'm going to attach this with pins around the mouth. So I'm just going to kind of pin that in place. I'm not going to try to get the foam. I just want to get the felt top to bottom. So I'll pin the chin in place. And then I'll look for the mouth, try to get that all kind of centered. Sorry, my camera's not quite in the right spot there. I'll try to ease this in along the side. And just pin it in place to where I want it. I could probably do this by machine as well. Oops. Ouch. And you just ease it in. So you'll look for the best placement and you just kind of ease that fabric in. You've got a little bit more mouth fabric to work with than probably, or puppet fabric to work with than was actually in the felt piece at this point. I'm just going to pin that around so I have an idea where I'm going when I hand stitch. Okay, so I've pinned that kind of around the mouth, making sure that my tongue is on the bottom side. When I turn this inside out, it'll be in the right spot. And try to hold that so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to whip stitch this around. There's instructions for the whip stitch, but basically it's just going around the puppet mouth, sewing that felt in place. Oops. Probably about 1/8 of an inch, quarter to a 1/4 inch around. Closer to 1/8 of an inch to make that really secure. Thread around that side. As I mentioned earlier, you could actually hand stitch a lot of this puppet together because of the type of fabric it is. It doesn't fray, so it's more prone to like the hand stitching bit. Just take that pin out of there. Just make sure I'm under that thread there. There we go. Whoops, sorry about that. Part of the problems of trying to use a camera to follow along. I have the same kind of view that you would. So I've got a bit of a gap here, so I'm going to just try to make up that difference. Oops. Got a knot. There we go. Got it sorted out. Getting caught on the pins. Take that one out. I'm helping a lot of the pins come out while I'm trying to stitch this in, so just be careful when that happens, that you're catching the mouth fabric as well as the felt. See, be forgiving with yourself. You can always go around this a second time if you want to make sure you're secure, grabbing everything you need. Don't actually want to go through that construction foam. You can, but it makes it harder. The seam bulkier if that's what you end up doing. Going around the other side now. So I'm just making a sandwich here of the felt. Take that pin out. Just using a single thickness of thread. Oops, caught on that pin. Got that pin. If you think you take too big a stitch, you can go back a little bit and capture what you think you might have missed. Get rid of that pin. So again, I'm working from the inside of the mouth. Take up that top pin. Got a bit of a knot there. So Can't get rid of the knot, so I'm going to try to be extra secure here and do a bunch of knots. Make sure I've captured that. So in case you haven't seen that, I'm sticking my needle through, and I'm sticking it through that loop just to actually physically kind of tie a knot. I'm doing that quite a few times here, just to be secure. And then I'm going to cut that. Oops. Scissors are kind of magnetic, and I'm going to cut that off because I think I've secured it. So I've stitched all the way around the outside of the mouth and the felt, and I'm going to turn that back inside out. Reaching up inside, tucking that, and pulling it in. So there's my mouth, all sewn in place. Oops. Those dots are everywhere. So you can test it out. So now we just get to decorate. That's the fun bit. So have you figured out what you want your puppet to be already? I have not, but I'm going to show you how to do the eyes and attach a nose. So I think I'm going to heat up my glue gun, and I'll be right back. I'm going to heat up my glue gun. I'm going to heat up my glue gun, and I'm going to come back, and I'll show you how we start to decorate and create a puppet. Have you thought about what it's going to look like yet? So apparently my camera shut off, so I didn't record how I put those eyes on there. So I'm going to show you how I butter up my eyeballs. Whoops, sorry. Drive by my cat. I'm going to show you how I did that. I have a spare eye here, so I'm just going to show you that. So this is a spare eye. So I just put glue around the outside edge, inside the eye or the bulb, but on the outside edge. Very hot, so please, 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 parents, do this for your kids, because I'm feeling the heat myself. And then when you've got your fleece puppet, you want to make sure you put it just below that line and by the seam. Put it on there, and you can almost push a little bit through the puppet head to make sure that you get a little bit of catch inside here on the inside of the eye. You can feel that with your hand when you're pushing the eye onto the fabric to make sure it catches in place. Okay? And you can see placement. I've got it just below the dart and equidistant from the dart and the center seam. Pretty close anyway. So I got those two eyes in. And it doesn't take very long to set, but you don't want to tug at it while it's on there. Okay? And you don't want to tug on it. It's pretty well set now, but I can still feel it. It's a bit warm. So now it's time to decorate the puppet. I don't really know what I want it to be yet. I had an idea of what I wanted to use for hair, which was this stuff I found at a store, but it's not very wide. So I'm going to take it off of this package first so I can see what I got. Is it a girl puppet? Is it a boy puppet? There's quite a lot of stuff you could do with it. I've got little strips of felt I've cut so I can give it a little test run and see if what I want for eyelids. I like the pink. I also have some orange. You can double layer Orange and blue, pink and blue. You can put an upper lid and a lower lid. Not quite sure. Something like that. Or with the blue maybe. So this is where you audition your fabrics and you figure out what you want to do. I like the blue because it gives a little bit of pop. So what I'm doing here is I'm test fitting it to see how much room I need on the outside of my eye. And how far up I want it to go on the skin. I pretty much just want to do a little tiny bit so it covers the edge of the ball. And then, and so I'm going to take my scissors carefully. Cut that. And I'm going to cut on this side too. Just careful you're not cutting the fabric of your puppet itself. And I think I got a little bit too much here, so I'm just going to trim that off. Fit that back on. And I wanted to also use some blue, so I'm going to just take that along that edge. See how much I want to use, and then I'm going to trim as well. Test fit it again. I like the way it lowered down. It makes it look a little bit more innocent. So I'm going to keep that one. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to get my pink. I'm going to flip it over. And cut another piece to match the other side. I'm going to take my blue and do the same thing. Trim that down. Okay, I'm going to use my glue gun again, and I'm going to just put a bead along there and attach that. It's stuck to me. Just be careful. You only get one chance at placement here, and I've got a little bit of glue lingering behind, so I may need to clean that up. We'll see how it goes. And the same with the other eye. Tiny bit of glue. Okay. And I'm going to fiddle with placement a bit. So it looks like I can get rid of that boo-boo by taking some of that felt off. So I think I will trim that down. And let me just test it again. Same with the other side. It's all about the test fit, you know. Try to make them as similar as you can. And then I'm going to put a bead of glue around here. Ow! Yes, glue from a glue gun is hot. Be careful, dude. It's hot. You get a faster result with the hot glue, of course, but other methods are possible that would just take a long time to set and dry. So you have to be very careful about when you place it, where you're resting it so it can have a chance to set up. So right now I'm just worried about securing it to the front of the fabric. I can go back in and secure the back later. I just want to have a good match up front here. Again, you want to look at the other eye and see if you're getting a good match. Do they both look the same? Same place. Looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go back in here and give it another shot of glue in the underneath part. And gently press that back in place. We don't want the glue oozing out, but we want it to be stuck in place. Same on this side. Just very gently tap it in place. You don't want the glue oozing out. Ouch. Like that, so it burns you. A little bit of loose glue strands, but you get the idea. So we're already getting a little bit more character. I'm just pushing down on that to make sure that glue has set properly. And to figure out what I want to do for hair. So this end of the thing is pretty pink, pretty light, and then it gets darker, and then it gets light. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with the hair. and how far back. It doesn't have to go far back to be on the puppet. I'm just going to rearrange my camera a bit to see if I can give you a little bit more, have a little bit more room to work here. Anyway, I'll play around with it a little bit more and I'll show you where I end up with that. But in the meantime, I want to show you how I start with the eyes. So right now I have a little Sharpie. And until you really know the character of your puppet, it's hard to know, but you basically want to start with a dot. Start with a dot and then put the dot the same place on the other side. And just double check. While you have a little dot, it's easier to check if they're tracking at the same spot. So this one looks a little bit lower. So I'm going to go here now and just try that. And then the Sharpie really is a great tool for this. You can always use acrylic paint, but you don't want it to peel off. So basically just do a little bit at a time. And just double check that you're still tracking. You want the eyes to be in the same spot, doing the same thing. You can also use the little dots to place to help, and then you can always outline those little dots. Can't remember where I got those little stickers, I think just at like a stationery store. Just keep tracking. Just keep checking and do a little bit to each eye until you get it right. And until I know more about what my doll is going to be, or what my puppet's going to look like, I'm going to leave it like that. And I'll show you the end result when I'm done, when I finished setting this puppet up. But that's where I'm at right now. I'll come back when I get it dressed up. Okay, I went a little farther along and I've decided I wanted this guy to have like sideburns. You can see how messy this fur is. And again, I want to show you something. So when you're working with the fur, and if you're sewing like a puppet out of fur, you want to, and this is your seam allowance, you want to get in here with the scissors and trim that hair away from the seam allowance. So basically that means getting in between the backing of the fur fabric and the fur itself and trimming away some of the fuzz. Otherwise that fur will get caught in your seam and it will look all matte, like it'll be all clumped together. So you want to pull it back as much as you can and trim some of the hair off. And it's better to do this first and have your vacuum handy so you can vacuum those nasty bits up, or they're going to be all over your house. You can see kind of what I'm doing here. I'm trimming back. You can use a razor maybe. This backing is really thin, so I don't know if a razor would do it for me, but I'm basically trimming back like a 1/4 inch so that when you do match the furs together, you can hide these bits, like those things will be together, and then you won't have all this fur caught in the seam. So that's basically what you have to do to the whole piece. Okay? Otherwise you have fur everywhere. But that's it. So it trims away some of the fur from the edge. So in the meantime, what I've done is I've given my groovy guy some sideburns and a little bit of a piece of fur that goes down the center of his head. So he looks pretty cool. He may need a mustache. He definitely needs a nose. So that's the next step. I've cut a piece of, this time gold, because I kind of think it goes with this. And what I'm going to do is a running stitch. So I want to basically gather this. It doesn't have to be fully in the back. So I've got a knot in the end of my thread, and I'm just going to run around the edge of the nose. Just with big stitches, 1/4 inch. You can see what's happening as it'll gather, right? And I just cut an oval thinking this would be the right size, but it's up to you what you decide to do. I just want you to see kind of my thought process and how I do this. There is a pattern for this shape in the pattern that I sell on Etsy, so you can see exactly what I did here. But basically, it's pulling, so I have a little pocket. So I'm going to grab some stuffing and just kind of wrap it in the ball and gather around it. And pull on that thread. Don't pull too hard because it will break. Okay, so I just want to have something that I can start with, and then I'll just grab the edges and stitch it kind of closed. It doesn't have to be all the way because I'm going to put glue in the back. But basically, I'm just kind of zigzagging that back closed, so like a zipper. And I want to watch the shape. I don't want it to be too oblong. I want it to be a little bit rounded at the end. So I'm just going to watch how I sew that bit together. And try to capture those ends so I make the right shape for myself. And I'm going to knot it a bit. So hopefully it stays in its shape. Okay. Okay, I'll shape that up a little bit. I'm going to trim off a little bit of the excess here. Careful not to cut my stitching. And then I'm going to put a little glue on here where I want that nose to fit. And I'm going to jam it in place. Now I've put glue just in the center. I may still want to hand stitch this on. Let's see how it looks. I don't want like a kid pulling it off for sure. Got a bit of a glue thing happening. I'm hoping I can trim that away later. But that's the nose. Now I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do a mustache because I think he may need one. So let me just see if I got some of my groovy fabric. I know I did a little. Not quite sure yet. So I'm going to also show you how I do an ear. So I need some more thread. And you can stuff the ears or you can just make them a little flap. I think I'm going to make this one just a little flap. So I had cut this out earlier. Here's another one. I had cut them out earlier. Wasn't sure how I was going to do it. Now the ears, you could gather them in the center so they pucker a little bit, which is typically what I do. I like them to stick out a little bit. I don't want them to be attached like flat against the head. So I'm going to try to do the same thing to both. Just going to thread that. And not the end. Okay, so what I mean by that, by the gather, is I'm gonna take a couple stitches here. Oops, something happened here. See how it just kind of makes it a little bit of a tuck, like almost like a wonton. And then I'm going to figure out where I want it on his head. So I'm going to put it just back here where my sideburn changes, and I'm going to sew it to the head. Now be careful just to take that first layer of fabric. And I'm going to start in the center because that's where my thread is attached. Sometimes it helps to stick your hand inside the puppet's head just to get an idea that you're not actually stitching it through too many layers. You just want it to attach it to that one layer of fabric. So I've got my hand in there. And I'm going to come back out here and just grab that first layer and sew that ear on. You can baste it on it first just so you get the right position between the two ears, and then you can go back in and make it really secure. So I'm just going to baste this in right now with a few big stitches. And I'm going to knot. And that's the one ear in place. So then I'm going to do the other side. And again, I'm going to fold the ear in half. Now just watch, because they're opposites, right? So you want to make sure that you've got the same thing happening on the other side, just opposite. So I'm going to take a couple stitches here to make that little curve or whatever, the fold. And then I'm going to grab where I want this ear to go, which is about here. I'm going to use a pin for now because I want to put it on in a guess way. Whoops, this pin broke. I want to pin it on, and then I'm going to go in and put my hand in and look at the puppet. It's going to be hard to see because it's pinned down a little bit. Just to make sure they're at the same spot. Maybe I'll just do this. And I think it needs to be here. Let's find my needle, which came undone. Sometimes if you turn the puppet upside down, it's easier to tell where that is. So that's my back of the head seam. My ear. And I want it to be here. So I'm going to stick my needle in, find that. Oops. Tough because there's some hot glue here, so it's a little harder to get through this area. Just stick my hand in there. Make sure I'm still in this just through the one layer. Yeah, there's definitely some hot glue happening in there. It's hard to get through. Pushing it against the table a little bit so I can get through that gluey area. And if worse comes to worse, you can glue the ears in place. Sorry if I got off camera there for a sec. Basically, I'm just stitching that ear in place and a knot. Okay. So the ears are done. Nose is done. And I'm trying to decide if I want a mustache. I think I do. It can be a little overpowering, so don't put too much in of the hair. If you're doing something, less is more, I think. So, but be creative and see what you like. And with this fur, remember it's directional. The fur is sitting in a certain direction. So if I want the hairs to look natural, I need to make the hairs all coming down. Stuff is so messy. Messy, messy. Give it a good shake. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue. Hold it in place, and I'll likely go back and sew it down. And that's it. I think this guy needs a little outfit of some kind, maybe a vest, I think. Right? No pants, because he has no legs. And he's groovy. Do you know somebody who looks like him? It's hard to get a good shot of this. I'll put a picture up in the display. You'll see it at the beginning of this video, I guess, when he's finished. But that's it. So that's creating creating your puppet. If I want to go back in and make his eyes look slightly different, like he's maybe laughing or sly or whatever, you would change the shape of the eye. So play around a little bit with a piece of paper and your Sharpie before you decide on going any further. Just start with that little dot for the eye, and then you'll know more as you progress. But that's kind of where I'm at with this. Sorry, I got off camera there. But that's where he's ending up so far. And I'll send I'll post a picture at the in the thumbnail so you can see what he turns out like. Pretty groovy. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video.